you need to understand the regulation. As a CMC biotech scientist, you serve two customers. You serve the patients that are in the clinic. You want them to receive a safe and efficacious product, but you serve also health authorities. This is your client. You need a clear understanding of what they need. And it's there. It's accessible. I mean, you have guidelines, but you need to access and you need to understand them and you need to apply them.
Welcome back. In part 1, Henri Kornmann explained how early CMC decisions, including your cell line, your analytical panel, your specifications, create the foundation that determines success or failure of your CMC program. But a solid foundation isn't enough. Now we tackle the structures you build on top. How do you scale from lab to commercial manufacturing without cracks appearing? How do you control raw materials, manage impurities, and handle stability through lifecycle changes? And critically, how do you maintain process consistency post-approval while still improving? Let's find out. Are you juggling the complexities of CMC development while trying to enjoy the beauty of biotech? Have you ever wondered if there's a way to simplify bioprocessing? Welcome to the Smart Biotech Scientist podcast, where we're diving headfirst into the very challenges you face. We're breaking it down, demystifying the jargon, and giving you the keys to unlock your full potential. I'm your host, David Brühlmann, and I get it. With 15 plus years in the biotech industry, I face the same challenges you do. There's a way to simplify and streamline so you can remove complexity, you can skip trials and errors, deliver without delay your groundbreaking therapy to clinics and market, and still enjoy every single step. Do you want to learn how industry experts and I did it? Grab a cup of coffee and your favorite notebook and pen. Now is the time to take your bioprocessing game to the next level. Let's smarten up biotech. What are now the next logical steps? Because you mentioned process validation, you mentioned we're in phase 2. Eventually we go into phase 3 and we have higher volumes, more clinical demand. So what are the next things, let's say a startup founder should think about, or even somebody who is a CMC leader in a larger company?
So I will go back to my house analogy. Phase 1 are the foundation message again. Don't mess up with the foundation. There are things, if they are not well done, you will really pay it later during the program. Phase 2, my approach is we don't change a lot, so you are still at foundation. From a CMC point of view, or at least that's how I see things, I don't see big difference between supply for phase 1 and supply for phase 2, except that suddenly you produce more batch and you create clinical exposure to your CQA. Then you arrive to supply clinical phase 3. And here, the recommendation is to supply clinical phase 3 with your final process, with the process that will be used for commercial. So most of the time, you need to scale up. So going back to the house analogy, when you think about scale up is I start to build the structure of my house. Can this structure stand and be extended? Can I put second floor and a third floor and maybe a garage to the next and making sure that the house stands? So this is the scale up for commercial, and you need to deliver a commercial process which is robust, which has a good capability, which has limited environmental footprint, where you have secured the supply of your raw material, where you have maybe for your critical raw material have dual sourcing. I have seen some company, for instance, that have two sources of protein A resin. They have like the main source, but they have also qualified an alternative source from another supplier. So this is what you need to develop. It's a heavy CMC package, scale up for commercial, but it's fundamental that at the end of this work package, you have something that is robust, that you can operate long term, because your process will stay for the next 10 to 15 years. This is usually the life cycle of a drug. It can stay long term. Going back to the analogy, this is really building the structure, the height of the house.
And at that stage, typically process validation and process characterization is done. For certain people, it's sometimes difficult to understand what the difference is. Can you just give us a 2-minute version of what do you do and what is the purpose of those activities?
I will go back to my house analogy. So the foundation, then I have the house, and then you move. So you have developed a process for commercial. So the house is almost ready. And then you enter the house and you check, can I live in that house? Are lights working? Can I heat my house? This type of thing. And this is what we call process validation. This is another big work package that is happening after scale-up and development for commercial. Process validation, according to FDA, and here I'm using the FDA terminology, they divide it in 3 stages. Process validation stage 1, stage 2, and stage 3. Process validation stage 1, this is all the studies that are needed just to design and justify your process control strategy. Just to give an example, I'm operating my bioreactor between 36 degrees and 37.5. That's my range. This is what I will put in my dossier. I need to justify those 2 numbers. So I justify it either because I control it very tightly or I need to test. So this is process validation stage 1. At the end of it, you have what we call the process control strategy, which is how do I control my process? How many samples do I take? How many cycles can I do on my chromatographic resin? How long is my hold time in my process? If I have a hold time, is it overnight? Is it 3 days? Is it 1 weekend? So this is all process validation stage 1. So maybe one message, because sometimes this process validation stage 1 is difficult to sell to management because it's requiring a lot of resource. So when you look at benchmark, process validation stage 1 is typically 12 to 18 months for a team of 10 to 15 FTE. So it's massive. But again, it's a requirement because you need to justify all your limits, how you control your process. Then you move into process validation stage 2. And here, this is what we call PPQ batch. So you run your process full scale.
What does PPQ mean? Can you explain that for us, please?
PPQ means process performance qualification, and this is your process, final scale commercial, with the process control strategy in place that you operate a certain number of time. And this is actually to prove that you can run this process and that it's delivering a substance and a product that are within the specification that you have set. There are 2 tricky elements to consider, to me at least. One is the number of PPQ batch that you will produce. 20 years ago, this number was 3. And everybody was happy about if you have 3 consecutive successful PPQ run, that's okay. Your process is good and validated. Nowadays, you need to justify the number of PPQ. So you have a lot of literature and publication and discussion about this number of PPQ, but this number of PPQ is one tricky element of process validation stage 2. The other tricky element is the timing of it, because obviously there is a lot of value in this. This is material you can sell and distribute. They are GMP. So you want to run those PPQ not too early, because then you will have shelf life issues. Because if you run it not too early, then you need to go into BLA, dossier is reviewed until you get your approval. And not too late, because they have to be part of your dossier. So the timing has to be think through. So this is PV stage 2. And then building on the house analogy, you move into process validation stage 3, which is continued verification. And this is usually happening after BLA. And here in the house analogy, this is, can I maintain my house? Can I improve my house? And this is typically process validation stage 3. And here, this is also a very important CMC package, because I said before that your process will be there for 10 to 15 years, maybe 20 years, and it will deviate. I mean, people say that in the life cycle of a process, the process will deviate by 1 sigma, by 1 standard deviation. Of course, some process never deviate, other process deviate from much more, but your process will deviate because some raw material will change, because one vendor will stop supplying that filter and you will have to use another filter, because you will be interested to optimize your process and maybe increase the productivity. So you will fine-tune your process parameter and so on and so forth. So this is why process validation stage 3 is important, is to making sure that once the process has been registered, because it will by definition deviate, it is still in state of control.
This is a very important point because the house building is extremely important, but then you want to live in the house for a long time. So you have to also make sure that you can tweak certain things. And I think that's also where good control strategy comes into play, and that you still can post-approval change a bit or also react to certain raw material changes between lots and so on, that you have some levers.
Exactly. And I think the main message I wanted to convey to the CMC colleagues and the scientists that are listening to this podcast is CMC is obviously important. There are mistakes that you could do that can never be fixed down the road, hence having a huge impact on the value of your program. And I think this message is supported by those 2 FDA analyses about how much CMC impact the complex complete response letter, the negative complete response letter from FDA, and refusal to file an IND.
I would also like to touch upon the human aspects, because you worked in different companies. You have seen a lot different scenarios, different ways of working. I'd just be curious, because you have a lot of things to orchestrate on. You have people from engineering, maintenance, you have people from process development, manufacturing, and oftentimes even external stakeholders, especially when you're in a smaller company. You work with a CDMO, you work with a CRO. What are some pieces of advice you can give to the people listening to manage the leadership part or the management part of this whole CMC program?
You just said a CMC program is multiple elements connected together. We discussed about the cell bank that needs to feed process development to different supply, drug substance, drug product, then distribution to the clinical site. So to me, the efficacy of a CMC program strongly relate with good project management skill. I think one piece of advice is make sure you have a very solid project management in place that will be able to build the plan, connect all the work package together, and most importantly, adapt the plan on the go, because by definition, your plan is not correct and you need to redesign constantly that plan and realign all those work package. This is one element. And the other element of solid CMC package is obviously solid scientific background. I mean, of course, it makes a lot of difference when you have access to expertise of people that can advise, because it's a multiple choice things. Every day, every week, when you are part of those CMC drug product development, you take decision and direction, and you need guidance. Sometimes you need guidance. So I would really also making sure that in one way or another, I will access this expertise. And finally, and that will be my third point, is you need to understand the regulation. As a CMC biotech scientist, you serve 2 customers. You serve the patients that are in the clinic. You want them to receive a safe and efficacious product, but you serve also health authorities. This is your client. You need a clear understanding of what they need. And it's there. It's accessible. I mean, you have guidelines, but you need to access them and you need to understand them and you need to apply them.
Yeah, most of these guidelines are not public, and so you should be able to access them. But as you said, yes, you need also then the understanding and the scientific, technical background to make meaningful conclusions out of that.
You're right. The guidelines are guidelines. So by definition, they are generic. And this is how do you translate those guidelines to your program that is key. But yes, they are by definition, they are accessible and public. I mean, they are issued by public institutions. So they are accessible. So that's the three elements: super strong project management, access to scientific expertise, and a very good understanding of the guideline. There is another analogy I like to use when I mentor CMC scientists. I say to them, you are half of a scientist and half of a lawyer. I mean, you need to understand the regulation because you need to navigate that regulation. If you are only a good scientist, it's not helping. Of course, if you have a perfect top-notch on regulation, it's not helping too. You need to master the two aspects.
Before we wrap up, Henri, what burning question haven't I asked that you are eager to share with our biotech community?
I think you did a pretty good job asking the good question. Again, I think the main message I would like to convey to this community is a CMC program is like building a house. And if you see it that way, you will be successful.
Great. That's awesome. So what is the most important takeaway from our conversation?
Most important takeaway will be do not underestimate CMC. Never underestimate CMC. Because if you do that, you will pay down the road.
Never underestimate CMC. This is a great way to conclude our conversation, Henri. It has been great. Thank you so much for giving a memorable analogy and helping us understand the criticality of CMC and also a practical way to succeed CMC development. Where can people get a hold of you, Henri?
I mean, they can be all on me on LinkedIn. That's the easiest way, probably.
Fantastic. Smart Biotech Scientist. I will leave the link in the show notes. And Henri, once again, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thanks for the invitation, David. It has been a pleasure. Bye all.
Henri's house building analogy reveals a profound truth. Biologics development isn't about the heroic late-stage rescues. It's about disciplined foundational work at the beginning of CMC development. Solid ground, quality by design, risk-based structure, and solid project management systems will get you there. Get these right early and your therapy reaches patients. Get them wrong and likely no amount of later effort saves you. If this changed how you think about CMC development, leave us a review on Apple Podcast or wherever you're listening from. And thank you very much for tuning in today, and I'll see you next time. All right, smart scientists. That's all for today on the Smart Biotech Scientist podcast. Thank you for tuning in and joining us on your journey to bioprocess mastery. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a review on Apple Podcasts or your favorite podcast platform. By doing so, we can empower more scientists like you. For additional bioprocessing tips, visit us at smartbiotechscientist.com. Stay tuned for more inspiring biotech insights in our next episode. Until then, let's continue to smarten up biotech.